my story of going through transformation, it does help a lot because now I can put myself back there and remember that feeling and that emotion of being like, man, I remember being uncomfortable. I remember skipping the lake. I remember doing everything I can to avoid pictures and the scale and the doctor. And like, I didn't play sports and I didn't do all those things really because I was heavier and I was never obese, but I was uncomfortable for sure and insecure. So remembering those things helps me have that empathy and connect with them. Yeah. But it also helps me dive into their story. Because there's also people who, for example, are amazing fat loss coaches that grew up as the skinny kid.
Right.
So they don't know their pain,
right. Yeah.
But they had their own pain. And I think the biggest thing is that if you can work through your own pain in your story, you're able to help somebody else work through theirs and their story.
Welcome to Congested Radio, Cody.
Dude, you have a radio voice. It doesn't even sound bad.
I'm trying so hard. I'm like digging deep into, or past, I should say, my congestion to go to my happy voice place to power through here. But
dude, like there was I got sick and I remember coming in and being like, I'm like, sorry, listeners. And he was like, dude, your voice sounds better for a podcast. I was like, it actually does. Like,
maybe that's the power of how to be a better podcaster. You got to be just on the fence of the right amount of congestion and under the weather to really, or just, can we like tap into more puberty, I guess? Like,
yeah.
To get it real low.
You already kind of had that though. You have that.
That's why we're here, baby.
Yeah.
That's why we're here, man.
Exactly.
But I'm here up in your neck of the woods. I'm up here in Seattle area, doing my jam on the other side of the microphone, I call it.
Yeah.
And this is what I love about podcasters and, coming back together with homies is that, we can get the most bang for the buck, man.
Yeah.
Most bang for the buck. It's been a minute since you've been on. And if you guys are listening, watching, we'll have to link. It's been a few years since I had you on the show a while ago.
Yeah.
Way back in, at least for me, the hardcore kind of like health and fitness days.
Yeah.
And I know this is still a big part of your world. And I shouldn't say it's not part of mine anymore. Taking care of the body is always going to be important to me and a part of the content. But I love seeing how you've grown over the years, man. I love seeing where we are now. You've got this incredible studio and gym and everything you're doing with tailored coaching. You've tailored your life time after time after time again, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Dude, that's like, I think, I don't know what point it was, but I got like obsessed with the idea of tailored everything.
Yeah.
Like, I really like the idea of, because even we talked a little bit about it, like there's a point where even with the apparel, it's like, okay, we either have to try to disassociate this completely or just go all in and make it a part of this and attach it to the brand that's already there. And I that's kind of what our thoughts are, but it's why, we're recreating. So the app's almost done. But that's the tailored trainer and this is tailored coaching method. And then we have tailored life apparel and this is the Tailored Life podcast that we just got done recording with you. And to me, it's all kind of boils down to like you said, man, it's like, what do I want out of life? I'm going to tailor it to me, not what is, and we talked about this earlier, but like, man, it's just not what it's supposed to be. It's not what they told me would work. It's not what they said that the rules I should follow necessarily. But this is, it's making me happy. It's making a lot of other people happy.
Good. Yeah. That's the ultimate marker for success, I think. But now that you're kind of in this happy spot, right? Not to say that you weren't before, but continuously in pursuit of happiness in your life. Do you feel which approach do you attribute more to that happiness? The evolution of the professional side of things or the personal side of things, or are they mutually exclusive?
I think that there's always kind of like this. I don't like the word balance because I don't think that you can excel in anything if you're balanced. And the reason I say that is because whatever you spend the most time on is what you are going to see the most success with. Mm-hmm. And I shouldn't even say that to it. Obviously, there's ways to, dare I say, balance this out because so my wife stays at home with my daughter. My daughter is very successful because she's successful in her development and everything because my wife spends so much time with her, right? I'm so successful with this because I spend so much time with this, but it doesn't mean that I'm not successful at home either. So there's definitely a balancing act to it. And I couldn't put one over the other, but the point is that you have to kind of equate them. So like when you knew me during this time, man, it was probably right around when we were podcasting the first time, but when my daughter was, born till 1, man, I don't even really remember because I was building the business, and I was so in this, and I was, my wife was taking care of her. My wife was feeding her. My wife put her down. So like I had that there. And so I didn't neglect, but I was so wrapped up in the growth of the company because it was growing so fast. I couldn't like tame it at the moment, that my mind was elsewhere constantly. My mind was constantly worrying about the business. And I think that at a certain point, I kind of learned how to shut off, like when I get home, it's like, okay, whether today, like I put out a bunch of fires and the fires are still burning in my head, I got to turn them off because I'm going to walk in, and my daughter doesn't give a shit about that. She walks in and says, Dad, and I have to snap out of it. So I started doing stuff where I actually would, like the thing that really like triggered this a lot was I started turning on music as I walked in the door to like have like a
little change state.
Yeah, like a theme song when I went in. But I intentionally played songs that made her want to dance, and then I would come in dancing. And so I did that because I knew my wife's been with her all day. She's waiting for dad. She's getting anxious, and like it's my time to be dad. But when you're exhausted from grinding and work and stuff, it's hard to do that. So you have to have some of that like change state, So I would do that, and that kind of helped me start to learn like, okay, like my energy in this moment is for her, and I need to like own that. And then when I'm at work, I got to own that. So I definitely learned how to like shut them both off. And I think it's success together, not one versus the other, because to me, like success is it's the pursuit. It's like the infinite game. If you've read that book,
Simon Sinek,
yeah, really good book. But that whole idea is so constantly in my brain, because I think that I am successful because I'm working, but I haven't reached a level of success that I'm done with, But if you believe in the infinite game, you're always, but you're never successful.
You're always successful, but you're never successful.
Yeah. So like, because I look at it that way, like I began to really realize like material purchases and where I live or what I drive or fancy watch, anything like that I've ever spent too much money on or anything like that, it never gave me that feeling. But the grind of building a business did. The when I got my daughter to learn something did, in the gym does. Like when I'm in a cut for a photo shoot and I have a destination that I'm going to, or I'm gaining, whatever it is, right? That pursuit is what I really like thrive on. So to me, it's like, man, like if I'm constantly working on something, I'm happy. So I think I want to make. I have the design. Actually, I want to make this a shirt. But it's I say this all the time, and this is what got my wife to understand. 'Cause she's not an entrepreneur, so it took for a while. Because she would say, "Are you ever going to be satisfied? Like you're just never satisfied. Like I don't get it." And like the thing that made it click with her, and I was like, "I'll never be satisfied, but I am constantly fulfilled."
Ooh,
and
I like that.
That's the thing, right? I'm always fulfilled, but I'm never satisfied. I'm never satisfied because I do want more, but it's because the pursuit and the hard work and the effort and all that stuff that creates the reward at the end or the gratification, all those things, like that's what makes me happy. Not necessarily the pat on the butt at the end of it, but like the pursuit to get that pat on the butt, and then it keeps going. So it's a long-winded answer, but I think it's like, it's an evolution, man. The work being done on both ends, personal and professional, is really what creates that success or that happiness.
Wholeheartedly agree. But I'm curious because your work, your world really is helping others really kind of in a one-on-one experience, coaching, training. How has your evolution kind of spilled over into the evolution of how you work with other people? Do you feel like it has influenced in any way your approach to fitness, nutrition, healthy living at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that in a few ways. One, I think that people, you'll appreciate this. Like stories are so important for learning. If we look at like Stoicism, or we look at any some of the most powerful personal development books that I've ever read are stories. They're fictional tales that tell a very personal story, or they're biographies about other people's lives. And when you can be a very perceptive person, and you can take notes and be aware and learn and extract lessons from all the things that you're doing in your life, and you can be very transparent, open, and authentic to the people you're serving, me being my clients, I'm an open book. So my stories from struggle, I can apply to their stories of struggle, be that small or big. Like, what causes pain or discomfort or struggle for you isn't greater or worse than for me. Like if we're both at a similar level of struggle, like the experience is relative to the individual of what caused that, right? As long as you, and granted, we could sit here and debate that. Like, of course, some things are worse than others, but it's important to go into it with empathy of the feeling they're having in their situation versus like the actual thing that's causing the feeling.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So when I go into coaching and I have that and my coaches have that, it clicks on such a greater level. Like I got 3 texts this morning from my coach, from her clients, talking about the story I told on the podcast about us being at Disneyland.
Beautiful.
But it was about how I navigated being healthy and staying with my routine and prioritizing recovery while on the go. And also not getting irritated in moments when my daughter was just overstimulated and throwing a fit. And I had to be the one to level the playing field and be like, hey, let's bring it down. Let's do this. Even though I wanted to yell and scream, right? So telling these stories, because they're like, fuck, I've been there. I've done that, and I think that all the things that I've gone through, be that big or small, just the fact that I'm able to really like take the lessons, the insights from it, that's helped me so much in my coaching because I can just be more relatable and I can talk to people as they want to be talked to, not as like, we've all seen that meme where it's like when a 19-year-old trainer tells a mom of 3 to, work out 6 days in the gym or some shit like that.
Yeah.
But I'm a little more realistic, a little more authentic, transparent, sharing my stories, being an open book. And I found that those things impact clients so much more. Like as much as I love the science of periodization and nutrition and all that shit. And I still have clients that like me to geek out every once in a while, but like those things that I go through, the day-to-day normal struggles that I navigate, those are what impact people more. So it's really just actually being mindful of those and then pushing it to them through the coaching. And it also, like, to me, I think that you kind of got to be obsessed with personal development, like to be that perceptive,
Speaking to the choir over here, man.
Yeah, you already know. And like, my wife used to give me shit about it because it was just like everything had to be like, okay, well, what's the problem? How do we fix it? Is there a book on this? Like, we're learning. And it's like, take your coaching hat off. But like, that's just how my brain works, And I think it serves a lot of people in doing so. But yeah, I mean, it translates so much.
When you are sponging, when you're absorbing, when you're listening, reading to stories, what really is it for you? Is it a matter of you really being able to see or to hear or to feel your own story also in this other person's that you then are able to extract that much value and apply? Or is it kind of maybe the opposite of being able to get lost in someone else's story and get away from your own, maybe get out of your own head, get out of your own heart more? And, does that open you up more to other ways of thinking or just other walks of life or maybe somewhere in the middle?
It's hard to say. I think that part of being a good coach is being a chameleon in a sense where you can adapt to the environment. So I would say I think it's in the middle only because there's going to be people that you work with that are on both ends of that spectrum that will.
Absolutely.
So how I teach one person needs to be how that person wants to be taught. So I think one thing we do in our coaching is we ask a lot of questions on the front end. Extremely long questionnaire. There's multiple calls. Like we'll get on calls with people and they're like, wow, I never got a call with my online coach before. And I'm like, what?
Never got a call?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I didn't have an introduction call. I'm like, oh, well, you got another one coming because this is just the first. Yeah, this is the first intro call. Yeah. But we ask a lot of questions in those calls and then we give them a questionnaire and then we're going to get more information. And then we get on another call. Like, let's go through that questionnaire because if I can learn more about you, and this is, coaches listening, you can steal this. This is a good tip. But like the questionnaire isn't just what is your age, weight, height. We need that stuff. But we take stuff from I believe it's 5, not 4, 5 love languages.
Yeah.
We take stuff from that because I want to know how you feel appreciated as a client. I'm not going to talk to you like you're my wife.
This book is so much a game changer for coaches. Dude. Beyond the obvious underrated of love and relationships, bro.
It changed a lot for me as a coach. And I've read it multiple times. But we use stuff from there in those questionnaires because we want to know how to make that person feel that type of way. Because as we know in our relationships, if me and my wife are a good example, and most men and women will hear this and be like, oh, yep, that's us too. Because most men are the same and most women are the same. If you actually look at the love languages, most of the time, a lot of women are acts of service. There's also a lot of like gift giving in there and stuff, but a lot of men are physical touch and affirmation based. My main one is affirmation. So because of that, I'm a very like, I write in my journal affirmations about myself. And then I leave my wife notes. And then I like love when she leaves me notes. Like, I'm just like, I want to like text people. I love them and email them, appreciate them more than anything. She's the opposite. Like I leave her stickers. I don't give a shit about this.
Like, quit dirtying up my mirror.
Exactly. Did you mow the lawn? Like she wants acts of service, right? So and I know that we're not talking about marriages, but like I started changing my daily like checklist of what I wanted to do. Instead of like leaving a note for her, it changed to active service. And then you really got to think, you're like, okay, shit, what can I physically do for my wife today? And you start picking up around the house. You start like helping her out. You start going and getting something for her that she hasn't been, but she needs to, or setting up an appointment, whatever it is. Because now I'm doing acts of service. I'm taking time to do something, and it means 10 times as much to her. But if I can learn that about a client, now I can coach them the right way. I can reward them the right way. Some people do want to be told that they're doing a good job. Other people don't want that because that will slow them down. They'll get comfortable. So you got to know these things, you know? So for me, I think that it's like, again, it's right in the middle, just because I try to use what I know about myself, but not in the sense of, we talked about this off air. Words of affirmation work for me. And discovering why they work for me is what helps me in that situation, not that they work for me. Yeah. Because if I can figure out, okay, well, what makes Chase tick that way, then I'm going to just do that thing to get him to feel that way, because I know what this thing does for me, you know? And it's the same thing. Like when I first started my fitness journey, I lost 45, 50 pounds. Like a lot of people don't know that because I was young. So it was getting into the industry, but I was always the chubby kid. I lost a ton of weight. I remember the feeling of girls finally looking at me a different way. I remember the feeling of having confidence. I remember the feeling of not sweating so fucking much when I'm walking up a hill. Like all the little things. And now I can use that as part of my story and have empathy and say, hey, I know that feeling. And it's not just like, oh, are you tired of having sweaty armpits? I'm like, are you tired of the scent that you smell, or the stain on the white shirt that you see when your armpits are sweaty, or when your legs are chafing? And I can talk about the feeling of having chafy legs, not about the fact that your legs are just chafing and this person looks at me like I wouldn't understand. But I don't know. I think if you frame it in a certain way, you can really tap into somebody's mind a little bit better. And I think that like my story, my journey, the people I've worked with, everything, I'm just constantly extracting to figure out how to use that to help people experience the same feelings as well. And in a big part of it is just like, again, like going back to being obsessed with personal development. I'm obsessed with helping people live their best life. Like that's really what it boils down to. Because there's something about the feeling of like, if like people on my team, like if they make more money, that's dope. Like some of them have like houses now. That's super cool. I get to help you pay your mortgage. Like that's a big deal. But it's the fact that you do it doing the thing you love, and you have some flexibility in your schedule, and you have some freedom, and you have empowerment. Like I don't know, there's so many other elements to it, you know? And some of the people on my team left cushy careers. Like one of my coaches was a teacher, and she really wanted to be a coach, but she didn't have like the empowerment. She didn't want to take the risk. She didn't want to own a business. I gave her the opportunity to like chase her passion and do what she loved, making more money. Like that's a feeling that like, and because I know her husband personally, I know her daughter, like I get to hear that story. Like that is what means a lot to me, you know, not the fact that she makes good money. Like that's cool too. But I don't know. I think you gotta, it's the stories, man. I've always been huge into people's stories, my story from the past. How do they intertwine? Like, this is the last thing I'll say, and then I'll stop on this. But I'm the type of person that, and again, the only people I say this shit out loud to normally is my wife, so that gives me shit.
This is a safe place.
Yeah,
safe place. We're in the tree of trust here.
We'll be at like an intersection, and I can think of actually the first time I said this. We were in Fife, and I'll never forget. It's four lanes in all four directions, so it's a massive intersection. And I remember coming up to stoplight, and there's cars everywhere. And I'm like, you ever think that every single one of these cars has at least one person in it? And every person's going to a different place. And every place is going to have a different experience. And they just came from somewhere that we don't know what just happened.
Oh, bro, I know exactly what you're talking about.
You know, and you start really thinking about how, like, if I got in a car accident and now I'm in their story, and now our stories intertwine. And how does that impact? And it's like, the chain of events it's just crazy, man. It's absolutely insane. And if you start seeing those things or thinking about those things, you'll notice more and more how small the world is and how much you can actually impact somebody's story of their life. Yeah. Whereas beforehand, the world's so big, you never even think that you make a difference.
Dude, that's so true. So many times I'm thinking, it's usually always in a car as well. Yeah. Or if I'm out walking around, I look at somebody who's walking or in a car. I'm like, you know what? Right now, I am in my world. I'm living my life and everyone else is just in my world. But that's the same thing for everybody else.
Yeah.
I'm just some other random person in their world as well.
Yeah.
At what point are we going to intersect, or our stories going to collide or not? It's so interesting to me.
And then your dog looks at you and you're like, holy shit.
Are you aware?
Yeah. It's a different world.
I want to go back to kind of the aspect of feeling. It really rings true for me, resonates so strongly when I was back in my health coaching days. That's really where I leaned in the most with my clients, because for me that meant the most. If I can pick up on a feeling you're having or not having about maybe why we are moving the needle or not in whatever the wellness, health, fitness, wellness goal here is, I felt like that always gave us not the best thing to do, but a next thing to do, or a moment to kind of pause and reflect. And also it leaned into, like we were talking about earlier on your show, this level of adherence that we could really just like grab hold of. What is it about feeling? What is it about a sensation, a feeling we have in relation to our health and fitness goals that is so important? When do you lean into the feeling more than maybe the workout or maybe the meal plan? Or when do you, if at all, do you go, we need to not acknowledge this feeling right now? It's maybe a feeling not serving us, and we need to push more with the fitness, with the nutrition.
Yeah, I think that it's a really good question. I think it could go multiple ways. Starting with the latter, one determination to maybe avoid digging into that feeling too much and kind of keep pushing forward is obviously, like, I think everything has, does this feeling or action or decision take me closer or further away from my goals, obviously, in the life I want to live, no matter what we're talking about here. So there's always that aspect. But then you got to think too, is there a physiological, like an explanational physiological reason that this feeling is happening? There is a lot of carryover between being in a diet, being in a deficit, having low body fat levels, energy expenditure, all these things, and cortisol increasing, ghrelin leptin changing, hormonal changes in your body affecting the way you think and feel. So if we can be aware of those things, then we know, like, and this is where it does help to be scientifically speaking, an intelligent coach as well. It's one of the reasons why I have a PhD on my staff, a chief science officer who is in the, he doesn't coach people. He literally does fitness research. Yeah. So he's on staff to educate.
You bring all this to the table.
Exactly. Yeah. So we can always like vet things by him. But if I can explain the reason you're feeling this way is because you're in a deficit, you've lost 10 pounds of body fat. This is causing these hormones to do X, Y, Z, this stress hormone is higher because of this, whatever it is, like, that's why this is doing it. We just need to push through.
Not as much a feeling, but rather a response.
Exactly.
Yeah, you had a stimulus. Here's the response.
Yeah, and hey, your body's working. Your mind is working. Your hormones are working. It's not a bad thing. It means it's difficult to deal with, but it shows that you are a human and things are working properly.
You're going to change.
Yeah, 100%. And so do we need to work on stress management, lifestyle intervention, diet break, take a deload, whatever we need to do to try to like up recovery to adapt, and fix that physiological response you're having to get rid of the symptom, if the symptom is going to carry on, right? Because sometimes it's a temporary thing. Sometimes we go, that's a sign that's going to continue to linger, and then adherence is going to drop off. You're not going to reach your goal, and that's going to have a tailspin effect. So one big thing to point out here too is you really can't be that in tune unless you've created a level of trust with your client that they're open to telling you that.
Ooh, I love that.
Because there's a lot of times that coaches don't understand that your clients do not want to admit that they fucked up or that they fell off the diet, they didn't track their food, whatever it is, because they don't want you to feel like they failed. They don't want to look like a failure to you. And the amount of times I've had those open conversations with people and reassured them on the front end of like, you will never be a failure in my eyes. I will never judge you for falling off. And this goes back to me sharing my story. I have fallen off countless times. I have not succeeded countless times. Like, I'm not perfect. I'm human. When they feel that and they can reciprocate it so that they're open and honest, and they'll tell you when, like, I was this close to falling off, or like, I've been really questioning this whole thing. I'm not motivated. Like, they'll be real with you. It's not a shot at you. It's just a shot at, like, their body is telling them to stop. Yeah. And that's normal during a diet if you get towards the tail end. So
literally survival.
100%. So like, I think in those scenarios, it kind of is like, okay, well, is the pleasure at the end of the journey greater than the pain that you're going through right now? And this is like, so you have this negative symptom, but you really care about this goal. is that symptom so great and so strong and so unbearable that we can't move through, or it would be dangerous to not move through
Yeah.
to get to the pleasure. And now it's just a reframe. It's like, how great is that pleasure? Because if you can keep that in their forefront, a lot of times those things are psychological. Your brain is just trying to get you to stop, because you're challenging it. And I think that's where another place where good coaching, it's an art really, but on the front end of the whole entire journey, you're talking to your client about the pain and the pleasure thing. And this is like some Tony Robbins shit I stole a long time ago that has helped me tremendously. But if somebody is starting their journey and their pain is that they look in the mirror and they don't like what they see, they're overweight, they're unhealthy, they sweat too much, they have no energy, their libido sucks, their husband won't look at them, whatever it may be. We've heard it all, right? As health coaches, if your clients are honest with you. And otherwise, they'll just say, like, I really want to be at 130 pounds again. It's like, that number doesn't mean shit. Let's be honest. So if we can understand that pain and then we go, okay, now what's the pleasure? And let's visualize it. Okay. So you're leaner, you're lighter on the scale. Your husband won't stop staring at you. I talked about, even this applies to guys. I wrote a post one time and a bunch of guys DM me like, dude, that is on the money. I said, I don't give a shit what the scale says. I just want to mow the lawn with my shirt off, and I want my wife to sneak a peek out the window. She's got me. She already knows she does. But if I can catch her and then she like moves away, I'm like, okay, I'm doing it.
There you go, man.
Like you get that stuff to like visualize in their head, telling stories, getting them to see where they could be. You love what you see in the mirror. Your pants fit differently. You walk in the room with energy. You don't have this grogginess. You realize that you haven't worn deodorant in 4 days, and you're like, oh shit, I haven't been pitting out. Like, these things matter. And now they go, that pleasure is so much greater than the pain I'm going through right now, especially knowing that if I work hard to get there, this pain will be away. Now, the next step is going, okay, there's going to be some pain required to get there. You got to go to the gym. You got to meal prep. You're going to have to work hard. You got to cut out drinking so much. You got to do all these things, which are technically painful. But as long as this pleasure is greater, those pains don't matter. Because now, once we get here, life becomes easier. Life becomes more pleasurable. And we paint this picture, and it's 10 times easier to get people to their goal when you have that open dialogue and you can go through this reframe and you can talk about this vivid image of where they could be versus the pain that they're sitting in right now. And I think I forget the original question, to be honest with you, but I think that that's, to me, like,
it doesn't matter.
This
is still good.
That's the art of transformation. Like, that is what it boils down to, is being able to get on a level with your clients to where you can break all that down. And I think a part of what you were saying is like, how do I adapt my storytelling to the person, or how do I, right?
Yeah. Are you pulling out, is it more of, are you finding yourself really enthralled in someone else's story because you see a lot of yours in it? Or is it, I can get away from my story finally and really just get lost in somebody else's?
Yeah. I think it is, I think it's the latter because of the former, if that makes sense.
Okay,
because
yeah.
I don't want to say this as a black and white statement, but I've often thought that there's something to be said about practicing what you preach, and so if you were giving me all those tips on sleep earlier, and I was like, Chase, you don't sleep for shit. I just wouldn't buy it,
Yeah.
So I think that there's this part of it where it's like, my story of going through transformation, it does help a lot, because now I can put myself back there and remember that feeling and that emotion of being like, man, I remember being uncomfortable. I remember skipping the lake. I remember doing everything I can to avoid pictures and the scale and the doctor. And like, I didn't play sports and I didn't do all those things really because I was heavier, and I was never obese, but I was uncomfortable for sure and insecure. So remembering those things helps me have that empathy and connect with them. But it also helps me dive into their story, because there's also people who, for example, are amazing fat loss coaches that grew up as the skinny kid.
Right.
So they don't know their pain,
right, yeah,
but they had their own pain. And I think the biggest thing is that if you can work through your own pain in your story, you're able to help somebody else work through theirs and their story. You know what I mean? Because, and this is why I don't talk about anything that I haven't worked through yet. Like, at least I don't give advice on it. I will openly discuss stuff.
Right.
But I've recently posted a lot more about being a father and all this stuff, because I finally feel like I kind of figured it out. Like, I'll never fully figure it out, but I'm like confident in what I'm doing, and I see the benefit, and my wife has commended me on the changes I've made. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to talk about this, because now I feel like I can help other guys.
Yeah.
But before that, I'm not going to talk about my struggles.
Who am I?
Yeah. Because either A, I'm full of shit, or B, I'm just whining on social media, which nobody likes. So, I think it's the former, so that I can do the latter.
I love this concept of the pain and the pleasure. And I think arguably, objectively, we could say that most people seek out coaching. They coach other people. They seek some kind of transformation in their life because they're unhappy with a part or all of their life, and they want to make it better. Better being, for here, their health, their wellness, how they look, how they feel. What about the opposite? What if I'm in pleasure? What if I'm really happy where I am? I don't want to say the word maybe maintenance, but more or less kind of I'm in pleasure. I want to stay in pleasure so that I avoid pain as much as possible. Mm-hmm. How do you work with that type of person? How would you approach that type of client of, I guess, like I say, you could kind of call it maintenance, but I want to stay well, be well, so that I'm really in avoidance of pain as much as possible.
Yeah, I think there's two scenarios there. The one is easy to rule out, and it's basically like you decide to hire a coach and have a transformation for the wrong reasons. You see what other people are doing, you think you need to do this, like, and this is like, it's very relative to the whole like body positivity movement,
right? Yeah,
which I think is very misleading and misguided, which could be a controversial statement. But I think the problem with it is that some people I think are using it as a scapegoat because they're insecure. They're trying to ignore their insecurities because. I've talked to many women who fell into that and then come to us. They have a transformation. They're like, I was lying to myself because I was uncomfortable with change, but I would be lying if I said that it wasn't a positive thing for me to lose 30 pounds, get healthier, live a longer life for my kids, and be happier in my skin.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's a very fucking positive thing. Body positivity should mean I'm not talking shit to myself every day. Don't be mean to yourself. Don't guilt trip yourself. Like, you are where you're at. It's your fault, and it's your responsibility to change it. That's okay. We've all been in shitty places, whether it's physically or not, and it's our fault, but it's also our responsibility. Take ownership and take action. You know what I mean? It's not a negative thing. It's a very positive thing. And we've worked with a lot of women in that state where we can empower them to do it right, and they appreciate it so much. And you got to be careful because you don't want to be too aggressive with it.
Right,
yeah. There's a very positive way to go about change without making it hardcore or too aggressive or too like bringing yourself down or anything like that. But again, if somebody is not in that state, but they're in a state that they're happy, they're healthy, they're going to live a long life, you don't need to be shredded or anything like that. Like, if you want to maintain and stay there, then hire a coach if you need help maintaining that. Don't hire a coach because somebody else is doing something that makes you feel like you should be doing something, right? So if you're in the case where you're like, okay, I recognize where I'm at is a good spot, but I'm not 100% sure how to stay here, or I struggle with accountability and adhering to this lifestyle that got me here. That's when you hire a coach. And in that sense, it's the same pain and pleasure, right? Mm-hmm. It's just that your pain is where you were, your pleasure is where you're at.
Ooh, yeah.
So how do we avoid going back to the pain to stay where the pleasure's at? And that's the habits and all these things that got us here. How are we maintaining it here? Is it sustainable? If it's not, let's troubleshoot. How do we figure out more sustainable ways to stay here? How can we swap this for that or do whatever we need to do to keep them there? Usually it's not a big calorie deficit or hours and hours of cardio and all that shit. It's a maintenance level physical activity, maintenance level recovery, maintenance level nutrition, training, everything, right? But again, it's just the pain and pleasure is always just a timeline, whether you're there or here.
So true.
You know, and I think that's what it boils down to. Coaching those people, it's just understanding where they're at and helping them get to where they want to be, and making sure that they can be honest about where they want to be. I did a post about it's okay to want to lose fat, and like a bunch of people loved it, and then there was like the few people that were like, it's also okay to not, like, you don't need to. And
sure. Yeah.
All those people, by the way, looked great in their pictures, didn't seem to have any weight issues. They were probably born that way too. So it's like, you speak on this. It's the same thing with like intuitive eaters who are like, tracking macros is obsessive. Anything can become obsessive and unhealthy.
Absolutely.
So maybe it was for you, and that's okay. If it caused disordered eating, you needed to do something else, that's fine. I know people who have done other things that it caused disorders, and now they don't do those things. It's like, it's all individual, but I think it's removing black and white external thoughts and judgments from other people, and just deciding, what do you want for yourself? And more specifically, again, where's the pain and where's the pleasure, and navigating through that timeline.
Let's take it a step further and go what I'll describe as optimization.
Okay.
Beyond the, like, I'm happy with where I am physically, nutritionally, inside and out, but I also am going to accept that I could be better. Mm-hmm. I could be a little bit better. Maybe I could be a little bit stronger. I could enhance longevity, insert any kind of optimization metric here.
Yeah.
How would you approach that? What are maybe some low-hanging fruit, so to speak, in optimization for somebody to grab hold of, or maybe that you would even work with them on?
Yeah, this is a topic I'm really interested now in because I've been doing this 12 years. So by no means I recognize I'm 30. I'm gonna be 31 this year. So I'm relatively young. But when you've been training your body in the gym for 12 years straight, I mean, it's a wear and tear on your body, you know?
You could use some fine tuning.
Exactly. Yeah. So I've done I've been dabbling into all the things I can naturally, so to speak, in order to try to optimize things, right? And thinking about those metrics. And I think this is where the next step would be, and I'll kind of go through I think the hierarchy. Because once you do that, I think that's where you get into the realm of hormone replacement and peptides and stuff like that. And the peptides world is just mind blowing right now.
Yo, I've been on peptides, not to derail you, but I've been on peptides the last year.
Yeah,
bro, it's one of those things that maybe it's like newbie gains kind of thing.
I'm like this close too.
Bro, you don't know. You think you feel good, right?
Yeah.
But then you do something like peptides. Personally speaking, you don't know how good feels, or how much mo better good feels, especially something like BPC 157 for me has been one of those things. I had no idea I could feel this much better.
Did you what injury did you use it on?
So I just use it from an optimization standpoint to start, but very soon after that, I had a flare up of a back injury from getting too excited, carried away with deadlifts.
Recover like that?
I recovered, I shit you not, bro, in 2 days compared to before that same injury, 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so I just had I can connect you to him if I want, Dr. Rand McLean on the podcast.
You got a guy?
Oh, dude.
I love the guy.
If you haven't, he had an episode on Mind Pub and a couple other really good podcasts that. He is. Yeah, he is in LA. Yeah.
Come on down.
He's in Santa Monica area. I
think.
But dude, just talk about a guy that knows peptides, just blows your mind.
All right.
But I've been diving into that realm. I'm the type of guy that's once I get to a point where I'm deciding I'm going to do something, I go just deep into research. So I'm still in the research phase because I've decided I'm going to do peptides, but there's a million combinations of peptides. I want to test these out. I've talked to a bunch of friends that have done it. And there's virtually zero side effects, which is the part that I was like, come on, let me do some research.
And especially something with BPC 157, the body naturally creates it already. Yeah. So we're just supplementing with something that's already in there to just, level up a little bit.
100%. So I think, and this is where I think that there's this realm of, or this hierarchy. And I think that not everybody needs to go that route.
Sure.
It depends on what optimization means for you. I was actually having this conversation with, he's a client of ours. Shout out to Jim. He listens to the podcast, so he might hear this on yours. He's working with Trevor, and he's lost a bunch of weight. He's the pad guy, the guy, maybe the pad holder, the iPad. We were talking about this just yesterday, and it was his maintenance is different than mine, and not in a sense of obviously calorie difference, but what I want to maintain is different than what he cares about maintaining. And part of that is because as a professional, I like to stay jacked. I like to stay on top of nutrition. I like to dive into the weeds of science and test things out because that's what I do. I'm a role model for this, so that I can tell you as a client, yeah, you don't got to do that. Don't waste your money on that. Don't worry about this. This works. This doesn't. And I can be the above average is my goal constantly.
Exactly. Yeah.
So knowing that, we have to look at okay, well, what is required to maintain that? Now, the things that are going to be required in order to maintain a high level of human optimization is going to depend on your standard and what your goal is, obviously, of maintenance, but then also your experience and your trauma and anything that has happened in your life. So this is where we start going into, okay, what injuries have you had? Have you ever had any diseases, any ailments?
I'm so glad you bring this up. Huge.
You know what I mean?
So important.
It changes everything because even for myself, and this is what actually got me starting to look into more peptides and all that stuff. I briefly touched on it with you off air, but when I got jumped, I had a really bad head injury. Now, this is a really good testament for people who, even I'm going to talk about sleep briefly because you'll school me on sleep, but I'll just mention it's important. But when we talk about body composition, maintaining a lean body comp is different than a lot of other aspects. So there's actually a good, the only research that actually proves that, and this would be a good thing to quiz some of the people but most of what I've read and what I've heard some really high professionals speak on as far as sleep and fat loss or metabolism or body composition, a lot of the research is done with sleep deprivation, right? Mm-hmm. Well, sleep deprivation is 4 hours or less in all these researchers. 4 hours a night is, that's destroying you. So what about the mom who's only sleeping 6? I'll tell you firsthand, that's not optimal. You're going to be more stressed. That's probably going to raise cortisol. You're going to be more likely to binge or to eat shitty food or not adhere to the diet because of that lack of sleep. However, if you have more discipline than the next person, or you're able to stick with it or anything like that, or you have a great supportive coach that gets you through it, metabolically speaking, you will still lose weight. Like you can get very lean on 6 hours of sleep a night. That's a fact. Yep. I promise it'll be easier if you sleep 7 or 8, but like just speaking like physiologically. So like the same thing applies with testosterone. Like if you deprive yourself of sleep, testosterone gets shot down. But if you get enough, like the difference between 6 and 7 isn't too crazy. The difference between 6 and 8 is actually a pretty big difference, especially for things like growth hormone and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But when we consider the impacts of testosterone on training and building muscle, testosterone does elevate muscle protein synthesis. It helps a myriad of things to build more muscle, to be more motivated in the gym, especially if you're a male because you rely more on that testosterone. However, there's plenty of natural bodybuilders that have proven you don't have to have crazy high levels. Usually what happens is if you're at the very bottom of the reference range, it's gonna be not very good.
You got more work to do.
Yeah. But if you're in the middle, you're like, it's not very high. It's not gonna make a huge difference if you get to the top of the reference range. If you take steroids and you get above the reference range, now you're in super physiological doses, of course, it's gonna make a huge difference. But what people don't realize, and I'm going to bring this full circle, what people don't realize when they think of, because people will think of TRT and a lot of times think it's a steroid. And although it can be classified as a steroid because it's from cholesterol, and that's technically, if you look at the Latin root word, it's boiled down from a steroid-like factor. But the point,
Latin on us, everybody. You know, there's some truth there,
some history. But the point is that when a steroid using bodybuilder is taking quote unquote steroids, it's an umbrella of IGF-1 and growth hormone and insulin and testosterone and Clen and Trent. Like there's a lot going on, a lot of which that actually spike all these muscle growing factors more than testosterone. You know, testosterone's in there for sure. Birth control, hormonal birth control is equally a hormonal steroid supplement as TRT. So is... Wow. I mean, if you think about it, so is any other kind of thyroid medication.
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, I say that because I think I've talked to a lot of guys that have worked with us too that they almost feel like guilty about taking it. I'm like, dude, like it's the same fucking shit. It's literally the same. Like if you need it and your doctor's telling you need it. So when I got jumped, I had, we didn't do a ton of CAT scans because my insurance doesn't cover it and they were through the roof. But essentially what they believe after trying everything on earth to increase my testosterone, they believe that the traumatic injury to my head caused my hypothalamus to not send a signal to my pituitary gland to help me produce more testosterone, because that's how actually the signal to your testes produces testosterone, right?
Yeah.
So this is where I started digging into like more hormonal replacement therapy and a lot of peptides, because peptides are all naturally made in the body. And so if you take TRT, it is synthetically made, whereas like peptides are literally amino acids from the body and they're just combining them. The doctor that we had on, Rand McLean, makes a really good analogy. He calls them like Tinker Toys. Or like Legos. You know, he's like, we just take this amino acid and this one, and the body's not putting those two together very well or very often. We're going to put them together, and now you have this thing, right? So they're just extremely fascinating. And I think that's going to be more on the spectrum of, when we talk about human optimization, that's going to be more on the spectrum of, if you've had some traumatic stuff. Like I said, this is why I'm digging into all that stuff. I've had 2 knee surgeries, the head injury. Like, I'm like, optimize me up. Like, let's test this stuff out. BPC 157 was like first on my list for my knee. But like when we look at this stuff, if there's no traumatic issue causing like a severe decrease in hormones or efficiency or productivity or mental wellness or anything like that, and you want to take these things, it's because your standard's higher than the normal human. But I'm the first to say that the normal human's not impressive. Not, at least not to me. If I can optimize myself to be better, like in a safe way, I will do it. I've never taken steroids before, and I never will, because I think that gets to a level where some of the things that naturally happen in your body can start getting changed a little too much. But
like the trade-off there is a lot up in the air.
Too great for me.
Yeah.
If I wanted to be a Mr. Olympia competitor, and that's fine. And I know I've gone to Mr. Olympia multiple times. It's really cool. I know athletes who have taken stuff and it helps them in their endeavor. And I'm not going to hate on it. It's your body. You can do whatever you want. For me, it's just not. But peptides, that's a whole different ballgame. And I'm like very fascinating and close to it. So it's cool to hear that you've been supplementing with
loving them. Again, one of those things, you don't know how good you can feel until you think you're squared away. Like someone like myself who has been prioritizing so many aspects of my health and wellness for so long. Like, I'm good. I got my stuff figured out. I know when I need to, pedal to the metal, when to let off. But then it's just this extra little level of insert a peptide or insert this optimization component. Man, it just like, even if it's just 1% better, it's like, wow. 1% when you're already running so high is very noticeable.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's a good point too, because you got to think like, there's certain factors, like you've controlled a lot to put yourself in an optimal position, as have I. There's certain factors you can't control though. Like I had a kid, I can't control when she has night terrors or when she comes to the room and my sleep's disturbed. I can't control all the blue lights negatively impacting me, because if I'm not at home, it's not up to me.
Right. Yeah.
And like, even when I am home, it's not always up to me, and I don't have the knowledge of until we realized blue lights were impacting us. Like, I mean, that's years of not knowing. We have somebody who's close to our family that is going through cancer right now, and it's because of the fumes ingested from the paint she was using during her career, which at the time they didn't know was a negatively impacting toxin,
a
right?
Carcinogen, yeah.
Yeah. And the mask that they used back then wasn't up to standards. So like, but she didn't know. You know what I mean? So like, until you know, you can't control everything. So if you're at a place where you're like, man, I'm crossing off all my check boxes, I'm still not there, there's nothing wrong with trying more. Before you go the peptide route or anything like that, because and again, we don't have a ton of clients on that from what I know. Like honestly, I have more entrepreneur friends that are using peptides than anybody else I know.
Of course,
because they're experimenting.
Like, give me a new hack. Yeah,
exactly. But sleep is always a big one. Like for us, we mainly focus on body composition. And so like the minimum you need is 6. And that's usually like, even for me, if I'm getting 6, that means I'm trying to sleep a few extra hours on the weekend or on the days. Like I said, my non-busy days, sleeping more. But we're always trying to aim for 7 or 8 if we can, but we're going to be realistic with people. Like you actually mentioned this earlier. If somebody can only get 6 and that's their lifestyle and their job and their career and their family, whatever, it's like, okay, how do we optimize that 6 to get you as well as you can? Now we have this little debt. Where can we replace that debt with some other kind of recovery or stress management modality, right? Maybe that's, and people forget about this because this is where it starts, managing your training program design. Should you be going that hard? Should you be doing high intensity cardio instead of just having a high step count? Yep. Should you be doing too much low rep heavy weight training, which is great for strength, but it's also very neurologically taxing. So maybe we do lean on a little more bodybuilding so we can play with that dial. Supplementation. I mean, even the simple stuff like electrolytes and sodium balance and creatine, obviously like protein, all that stuff, fish oil, multivitamin, greens, reds. Like, are you taking these things? Like if you have the financial means to spend a little bit of extra money on like the basic, like just, I call them insurance policy supplements, like, you don't need pre-workout every time. But if we can get you to take fish oil and a multivitamin, it's like your insurance policy. It's a safety net,
Strong foundation.
Exactly.
You got to have the foundations covered in everything.
100%. Sleep supplement. That's always a good one too. We work with First Form, so I'm always repping their stuff, but they have a really good sleep supplement. It's not just melatonin. There's things that help with neurotransmitters in there. So you can take ashwagandha or GABA and things like that. So it's kind of like, we're checking off all these boxes and we look at your training, your sleep, your nutrition, your hydration, then the supplementation, then your caloric, it's your calories, but also like, what those calories are filled with. So it's true that calories and macros, calories and protein, if you have those dialed in, you can get your body composition pretty dialed in. If you want to maintain more muscle and or build more muscle, recomp, I would probably say you're going to really need to focus on carbs because that's what fuels training and recovers muscle. So then we can start really like playing with macros all together. But if you just hit macros and you get super lean, it doesn't guarantee optimization. So that's where we go, okay, well, we also need to fill those calories with, are you getting at least 1, if not up to 3 servings of fruit, and then your 2 to 3 servings of veggies? Are you getting your omega-3s? Are you getting multiple sources of fats, mono and polyunsaturated, but also some saturated fat because that helps your hormones? Are you getting fiber? Are you getting prebiotic and probiotic fiber? Like we can go down the list of all these different things within your calories that do optimize your diet, and it'll help your digestion and your body internally sustain, And then again, if you get to a point where you're like, all right, I'm ripped, I feel great, I want to be like on top of the world, I want to like improve my brain health or anything, or you have had a traumatic issue and that's holding me back, then we talk HRT or peptides and stuff like that, which I don't prescribe obviously, but I can refer people. We have a PhD on staff who can look at blood work and stuff like that. So it helps. But yeah, I think there's like a big hierarchy, I think, in that optimization conversation
That's where I'm at personally. I usually kind of think you're either in maintenance, performance, or aesthetics.
Yeah.
Now I kind of feel like it's performance, aesthetics, or optimization. Personally, I feel like I don't ever want to be in maintenance in terms of I'm just going to do this workout. I'm going to eat this certain way, sleep this much, and just stay the same. Yeah. Not to say there's anything wrong with that. Absolutely, there's a time and place for that in life. But having gone through all those different modalities or trains, school of thought when it comes to training in life, I really do believe that if I can push out more optimization over maintenance, then just incrementally, I and everyone else around me is going to be getting a little bit better. And therefore, your new level of maintenance is just always at a higher standard, higher standard.
Yeah. I think that most people need to see the big picture of where they want to go, because if you can't directly draw a line from maintenance to where you want to go long term, you're going to have a tough time adhering to maintenance, because maintenance is boring. You're not doing anything. You're not working on anything.
Maintenance takes more work than a lot of other shit sometimes.
Yeah, because
to stay the same and to keep that infrastructure solid, it takes a lot of discipline, a lot of time, a lot of other things supporting that.
Yeah. So what we do when we coach people through maintenance is we instantly start implementing, even if it's non-fitness based, other goals. Because as humans, we need to.
Oh, nice. I like that.
We need to move forward, right?
Yeah.
You have to. That's just part of how the brain works. So are we reading a certain topic and studying it? Are you building something? Are you creating something at work? And I've always looked at life as there's pillars. There's essentially your mind, your spirituality, your confidence, your being, yourself. You can put religion in that category. Then you have your career, your business, your finances, your savings, all that, your investments. And you have your family, your relationships, everything there. And then you have your body and your physicality and your health. And so if you're not trying to move one of those categories forward, you're
what is you doing?
Exactly.
Really, what is you doing?
Everybody listening, think of any goal you have had. It's going to fit into one of those categories. You want a better marriage. You want to have kids. You want to build a family, or you want to grow your career. You want to get a raise. You want to save more money. You want to invest in something, or you want to get ripped. You want to build muscle. You want to perform better. You want to optimize, or you're trying to find faith, learn about spirituality, be more confident, less insecure. It's always in those things. So we can shift to focus on growing in one of those areas while you don't grow in your body category, let's say. But just know that maintenance, what you're doing in maintenance is going to serve your next physical goal. And that's really important. So if by me maintaining, I'm going to do better with my family and my work, because this keeps me at a good recovery base and stress level, then I know it's for a reason. And then I also know that if I stay at maintenance, next time I go to do a cut, or I want to build, or I want to take it further, I'm going to set myself up for that.
So true, man. I'm so glad you hit on that.
But most coaches forget to educate people on that. So we're going to maintenance, we're just going to chill, and they get bored.
Yeah.
Get stale. And then they fall off, and then they're playing backtrack. But they'll get so much further in the long run if they just take that phase seriously and do it the right way.
I think as humans, whether we're being coached or not, but also as a coach, that I think is one of the most important, one of the most valuable things we can do, is to be conscious of what comes after this goal.
Yeah.
There's going to come a time and place where you're done working on the thing you're here to work on. Therefore, you're going to have to begin to work on something else. And that working on something else could literally just be maintenance, like we're talking about. There's going to come a time and a place when your efforts, your intentions, your why, your daily living is going to no longer need to look like what it looks like now. So how do we stay aware and focus on that, but also aware and semi-focus on what comes next, so that the here and the now serves the then?
Yep.
Or else, no matter which phase we're in, we're really not setting ourselves up for the most amount of success possible.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we tell clients when they come on board right away is that, and it sounds very weird as something when you're selling or signing somebody up to come work with you. But we say, we know you're going to leave. Whether your transformation or your experience takes 3 months or 6 months or 9 months or 12 months, or shit, you're with us for 2 years. At some point in time, you are going to leave, because you are not going to have a coach for the rest of your life, which means that you need to take this seriously, and I need to pour as much education into you along the way so that you understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how it's working. And like you said, how it's periodized along the way. Why is this phase and this focus going to implement or affect or impact the next phase? How does that phase prepare us for the next phase, right? And what can we do differently to change the phases? If you can understand how to shift and navigate through this, they have the tools. You know what I mean? And then at a certain point, again, they leave, but now they don't come back to you 6 months later and go, I gained the weight back.
Yeah.
Instead, they keep the weight off and they keep telling people about you, because for the next 2 years, they stay lean, they stay happy, they stay optimized, and they're helping other people. And now word of mouth spreads because you were a good fucking coach.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah.
You know,
what do you see right now? You know, kind of blanket statement here, objectively. Or I shouldn't say objectively, just like generalized statement. What do you see people really grabbing hold of and keeping like well in their life? Something that is, you know, a just general kind of wellness thing that people really got, in your opinion? And what is one thing you're seeing right now that people are really struggling the most with?
That's a hard one, because I think it changes over time, you know, depending on like what's going on in the industry.
Let's say in this last year.
Yeah. I think that strength training is definitely the people are the most aware of its benefits than they've ever been. I see far less women afraid to lift weights. I see far less people arguing that kids shouldn't strength train and stuff like that. I see far more teams of different sports strength training. It's just very, very common. I think it's very commonplace that strength training is going to help you live longer. It's going to make you healthier. It's going to do a lot for your heart, just like cardio would. It's going to, you know, muscle is good, strength is good, functionality is good. I see a ton of that. I think that's a really big piece. I think that there's, at least in what I see in the industry, I think there's too much of, I don't know, this wouldn't fit into the category of missing necessarily, but like, and this is going to be something that it's kind of controversial. People will argue with me on this. Too much focus on mobility. There's a lot of people who
wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, they overthink that and overstress it, because the reality is this is like, if you're strength training with a controlled range of motion and a controlled tempo, you're taking muscles through a full range. You're taking joints through a full range. You're taking a muscle through a lengthened, shortened time frame. And it's more applicable to real life. So if you just do yoga and you have the most flexible hamstrings ever, but then you go into like an RDL stance and try to pick something heavy off the ground, you're going to tear your hamstring. You've never done a hamstring stretch under load. And you get the same benefits of doing a RDL with weight as you would a toe touch. You really do, because you're stretching the muscle out of length. Now, you shouldn't go from 0 to 200-pound RDL.
Absolutely, yeah.
But there's a lot of research to show that you can get the same benefit. Now, that doesn't mean don't stretch. There's a lot of application for stretching and mobility, right? There's a lot of application in the rehab world. There's a lot of application. And even in the strength world, if you increase flexibility doing one thing, it's going to be likely that you can increase it under load for strength training as well. But it just, I think that there was this like really big like fad of mobility where people would spend 30 minutes to an hour doing mobility in the gym. It's like,
got to be a supple leopard, baby.
Yeah, like that, and that I think that got carried away. And I read that book; it's a great book.
No shade on Kelly, you know, I love him.
It's a great book, great book. And I think I've had 2 knee surgeries. Trust me, there's a time and a place for this kind of stuff. But I do think that if you intelligently strength train, you can do very minimal mobility, and I think that's risen a lot over the years. But I also think that it hasn't had a negative impact. CrossFit has had a very beneficial impact on strength training. That's for damn sure. But I think people are very aware of strength training being important, being accepted, being a very beneficial thing. I think that it's funny because it kind of traded, like it was like cardio. Now it's not, and now people shit on cardio, and I'm like, actually, cardio is really good for you too. You should do that as well.
It all comes in cycles.
Yeah,
man.
it does, and everything should be done in the right dosage. I think that mobility and stretching should be done, but for a while it's been at too high of a dose. You know, cardio, same thing. Now it's like minimized. It's like, no, you do need cardio, whether you're trying to gain muscle or not. Like, it's good for you. You need it. You need a good aerobic system. But the thing people are probably missing the boat on, honestly, has nothing to do with nutrition or training. But it applies to that. I think in that world, I think it's discipline. I think that there's this, you know, if it's your macros had a big impact on this, and I'm a huge proponent of flexible dieting. You have to be when you have a kid. That's for damn sure, because you got to be able to adapt. And, you know, I was in Disneyland last week, so it's like you got to be able to do that. Yeah. But it's gotten to a point where people are afraid to work hard. They're afraid to say no. They're afraid to like, hey, like it's okay to want to eat chicken and broccoli every once in a while. Doesn't mean you can't have a Pop-Tart or an ice cream cone, but like you should be able to eat healthy foods. Healthy foods are good. Clean eating is not a bad word. People like frown on the fact you said, oh, that food's clean. It's really good for you. It's healthy. It's full of vitamins and minerals. That's a good thing. And I think that there's been this like, I don't know if it's just the world having more convenience and handouts that people are they're less likely to push themselves. They're less likely to challenge themselves, develop some grit, self-discipline, traits that I truly think have made humans what they are, and it's like fading away. And I've said this multiple times, and there's correlative research, so I can't point to a research study that proves this, but if you look at the correlations, it just makes sense. Anxiety, depression, suicide, all these things that have impacted people in my life tremendously, and I have a very soft spot in my heart for, they've consistently gone up over the last few decades. So has physical activity. So has hard work and labor, plain and simple. So there's a reason why working really hard has a very strong dopamine response afterwards. And if you just get handed that result, it doesn't have that same dopamine response. It's the work you put in to get that matters. So if you constantly get handouts, you constantly get things easy, you have no discipline, or you're constantly waiting for something to motivate you instead of having the discipline to get started when you don't have motivation.
Get out there and motivate yourself.
Yeah, that's what's going to really, I think people are missing the ball on, and they're afraid to do because it's challenging. It's not comfortable. But anybody who's successful has pushed into discomfort and has developed some discipline and some grit, and that's why they're successful. And I believe it's very strongly associated with people's longevity, training, nutrition, all that stuff. It's important.
Could not agree more, man. Could not agree more. I really liked how you kind of went there. It gets you thinking differently. But it all matters when it comes to our health, our fitness, our wellness. There are so many extraneous variables that contribute to maintenance, success, moving the needle, or even taking a step back that we don't always think about.
Yeah.
There are so many other things that make us human and that make up our day and our life that don't directly equate to the goal we have before us. But if we take a step back, it all contributes.
Yeah.
It's all there. It's all there, man.
It's all connected, man. That's one, and even going back to the very first thing we started talking about, I think that is, I've actually been told this by clients because I've asked people, what makes our coaching different? And this is it. It's the realness of those conversations, and it's the willingness to challenge somebody to develop that discipline that they need, because it's going to carry over in every other area of their life. Mm-hmm. Nothing is out of my scope of practice as a coach from a standpoint of conversation. Right.
Interesting. Okay.
They teach you that, you remember this. Back in the day when you're just trained to do not recommend any supplements. It's out your scope of practice. Yeah. They say that about at a certain point, if it's, that's a therapist job and everything, I'm just having a conversation. I'm not directing anybody, because half of what they need is they need a vent. They need to feel like they can openly discuss something, and they need somebody to just kind of challenge them with why or how come or what if, and then they start thinking and they give themselves the answer.
Yeah. There's a difference in asking questions and even prompting questions than telling somebody what to do and how to do it.
100%. Exactly. Yeah. And so I think that a lot of that mindset work comes down to that. It's having those open, honest conversations, and then just sharing my story, right? Well, this is what I did. This is what helped me. This is what I experienced when I felt like I didn't have discipline or I couldn't control this factor of my life. This is how I overcame that. This is how I took action. This is how I stopped worrying about XYZ variables that could happen. And if they do something similar, it's going to help them a lot. If they don't, then I'm going to share my story again in a week or two, and it's going to, you know what I mean? Eventually it rubs off. But I think it's the mindset thing, because people are getting it now. All diets can work, it's just what's going to work for you. Almost all types of strength training programs can work 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, upper or lower, full body, CrossFit, bodybuilding, everything can work.
Absolutely.
It's about what works for you. And I think the biggest part of adhering to something long-term, it comes down to that mindset aspect. There's a lot to it, obviously, and we can focus on health, sleep, stress, recovery, enjoyment of the process, being goal focused. All the things we talked about all help the adherence. But the thing people are missing more than ever is just that, I think that the discipline and the grit, man, and it's something I've focused a lot on, because I think there's people that a lot of us listen to that are almost too aggressive for some people. It works for some people. I listen to David Goggins and I get fired up. Some people are like, this guy's a lunatic.
Both are true.
Both are true. 100%. Yeah. And some of us enjoy the insanity of it. But there's a 40-year-old mom who needs to lose weight and is stressed out that is not going to get what she needs from David Goggins. Mm-hmm. But she will get what she needs from me speaking on the same thing in a better tone. Or one of my coaches, who is also a mom and a female, speaking in the same way, because we all have the same mindset and theory around it, right? But it just boils down to we got to work hard, you got to have discipline, you got to have grit, and you can't rely on motivation alone. And simple.
want to ask one question before I get to my final question here.
Yep.
To kind of bring it full circle to working with people and being the person being worked on with a coach and being the coach working on people. What is one thing you're doing right now, or what is one area that you want to begin to work on that is going to make you the next level coach that Cody needs to be?
Oh, that's a deep one. Similar to what we were talking about off air about ego, and not in the sense that I feel like I have an ego issue, but being more maybe questioning like intrinsically. I don't know if that's the right word, but like really starting to like assess and identify my actions more in my personal life.
Okay.
So my conversation, more than anything, my conversation with my wife and my daughter, like those are the biggest things, is like when I do something, say something, act a certain way, have a certain energy, anything along those lines, and then trying to pay attention to how my daughter responds. If I can control it before, like that's a huge win. But there's a lot of times where we respond on emotion, right? So like for me, it's like kind of going back, like in like reflecting on how I just was and how they are now. Like how does my energy impact those people? And I told, I think it was Andreas that was on the podcast. We were talking about this, and like one of my big goals for 2023 is constantly having the mindset of every room I leave, the people who are in that room are better off because I was there.
Hell
because
yeah.
if that's the last time they see me, or that's the last time I see them, anything, like you just never fucking know. Alex Hormozy had this quote, and it's so fucking good. And I think he got it from somebody else, because he said an old man once said that when you're young, you don't realize that every day is the good old days.
So
and I was
true,
like,
man.
fuck, that is powerful, because it's like my daughter's throwing a fit about something stupid right now, right? But when she's 16 and she's bringing a boy over and the fit is about like the high heels for prom that are, I don't know. Like
You're going to wish you was throwing a fit.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah.
I don't know what 16-year-old girls throw fits about. I'm not there yet, but exactly. Right now it's about a stuffed animal, so I'm going to take it, you know? When I'm grinding in the gym and I don't want to finish my workout because I'm tired, man, when I'm 85, I'm going to be like, fuck, I wish I could work out like that again. You know, every moment. And you really think about that. You're like, damn, that is wild. So I think for me, like being able to have that, he called it a grandfather frame, but like having that grandfather frame in everything I do has helped a lot. And it ends up allowing me to, again, try to leave people better off. Like every room I do, what kind of energy do I bring in? And I first started testing it with like coming into my house, dancing with music. And you can't do that every day, because then it gets boring after a while. So you got to switch it up. You got to do other things. But like I started really trying to play this game of like, okay, how can I make my daughter laugh hysterically? How can I make her have more fun than last time? How can I invent the new game? How can I teach her something? And it's just a game. Even with my wife, it's the same thing. Like, how can I make her happy? How can I make her want me more? Like, she's been married to me. I'm the same guy every day, but how can I keep making her want me more? You know, everything becomes a game. And when you do it that way, your enthusiasm, your energy, what you bring to the table in every single room, it just, I don't know, man. You end up feeling better. Selfishly speaking, I just realized like I feel way better.
So true, yeah.
But I want everybody to just, I don't know, I want everybody to leave better because of it. And I think that's rubbed off a lot of my coaching, because I even think of it if it's an email exchange. I'm like, okay, well, they're going to read this email. It's just a fucking email. But how are they going to feel when they read that email? You know, I've told interns that start with us, I'm like, you don't have enough exclamation points in your emails. You're not even excited about this shit. And they're like, I'm super excited. I'm like, I know you and I know you are, but your client's going to read that and be like, they don't give a shit. So show me. Or film a video, because this email is not working. Film a Loom video for every single response.
I love that spin, man. I love it. Yeah.
So that's been a big one for me. And I think that's been translating a lot into, I mean, everything, but yeah.
Fire.
Yeah.
Fire. Well, man, I got to ask you my final question. And in a way, I feel like kind of what you just described might hit on this or might contribute to the answer. But I always ask my guests, you know, bring it back home for me, the mantra of living a life ever forward. When you hear those two words, what does that mean to you? How do you live a life ever forward?
It definitely, what I just said definitely contributes to it. But I think in literal, like the thing that literally comes to mind is today better than yesterday? And then tomorrow I'm going to think the same thing. And so every day you're getting better, right? And I think that, and I mean, I write that in my journal every morning, actually. It's like, how will I be 1% better today compared to yesterday? And that's like printed in our like tailored coaching journals that we give clients. And so you literally determine that every single day. And some days, honestly, it's like, I will be more patient today. I will be less irritable today. I will have more energy today. I will give more smiles today. I will give a compliment today to a stranger, you know? And like the funny people have this, but I literally do this shit. Like And this goes back to like the energy you provide off on people. So example, I wrote that I'm going to give somebody a random person a compliment today. In Disneyland, we were waiting for the teacups, me and my daughter. My wife didn't want to go on because I start cranking on that thing. My daughter loves spinning. My wife doesn't. And so we're waiting, and this guy is sitting in front of me, and he had a smartwatch on, but it wasn't an Apple Watch. And it looked really dope, and I noticed it. And usually you just look, and it's cool, and then you look away. I was like, this is my compliment. And I was like, bro. And he like turned. I was like, that is a dope watch. Is that a smartwatch? He's like, yeah, it tracks everything. I'm like, dude, that is so sick. And then I look, and it's his birthday. I'm like, dude, happy birthday. And it's my daughter's birthday. So she's like, it's my birthday. And it was like this thing. He was like smiling. He was happy. And then I was like, man, I just want to say a sick watch, blah, blah. He goes, and we're sitting there, and my daughter looks at me and goes, Dad, you're so nice.
Oh, wow.
That was the impact. That guy probably forgot about it 2 seconds later. He probably got drunk on his birthday that night and completely forgot about it. But my daughter
got to see you act that random act of kindness.
And I never think about this, but there was a time where the windstorm hit and somebody's garbage can was in the middle of the road. Nobody was stopping. I stopped my truck, got out of my car in the rain, dragged it all the way into their driveway, got back in my truck. My daughter was watching her iPad in the backseat, but she stopped and saw me do that.
Wow.
Said the same thing. This one lady's nativity set fell over during Christmas, and I picked it up 3 times in a row. At one point, I want to knock on the door and be like, this old lady, I'm like, this thing doesn't work. But my daughter saw me do it one time. She was like telling everybody. Yeah. She told kids at school and her teacher. She told her mom. And like, I didn't brag about this, but Dad's so nice. This is what he did. And it's like, now she's going to think of random acts of kindness because I'm doing it in front of her. Mm-hmm. And that goes back to like, if I be 1% better today, sometimes that impacts the room that I'm in, whether it's my daughter or it's you or it's my wife or anybody. So it's just like, what one thing are you doing today that's better than yesterday, man? That is, I mean, plain and simple. You do that every day, you're going to be 365 times better by the end of the year.
That's math.
I'm really good at that kind of math.
That's science. Well, Cody, man, it's been so good connecting with you. Thank you so much for having me here. It's been great. Just like conversing with good humans again. Yeah. And I love what you're doing at Tailored. I love the show. I love the coaching. I mean, I love knowing that there are people out there that help other people in a way that just like, I'm just going to say it's the right way. You know, it's all encompassing and everything matters. And you're a human along the process. You're a human and you're a coach, and people need that.
Thank you, man.
People need that.
I appreciate it a lot, man. It's been, like I said, you're the first one out here to check out the new studio because we just got here. So I was excited. Really.
Well, where can everybody go to connect with you? We're going to have, of course, everything listed down in the show notes and video notes, but where can they go to learn more about you and coaching and everything? Yeah, so tailoredcoachingmethod.com is where, I mean, everything's hosted there. We have the Tailored Life podcast, which if you like this, then you're going to hear Chase on mine as well. He's been on there more than once. And Instagram at Cody McBroom. I post a lot of content there, and we just started doing YouTube again. So we're going to get back there. We're going to post some educational content on there. But again, tailoredcoachingmethod.com, Cody McBroom.